Well, theaters are haunted for a few different reasons. One, theaters tend to be historic buildings, so they tend to be older. They tend to be places of great emotion, some real, some acted. But as most actors will tell you, just because it's being acted doesn't mean it doesn't feel real. And actors themselves are highly theatrical people, so why would we stop being that in death?
On today's episode of Hollyweird Paranormal, we break down our big interview and investigation at the East-West Players Theater in downtown Los Angeles in the historical area of Little Tokyo into two parts. You'll sit down with us in part one to speak with Andy, the theater's director, to learn about the history and its ghost stories connected to this theater. We've said it once and we'll say it again. It seems like every theater has a theater ghost, but this theater definitely has more than one. So who or what is haunting the East-West Players Theater? Well, you're going to have to tune in to find out. And find out if Bryce actually survives the entire investigation. I mean, you'd be surprised. I was. So you know the drill, guys. Grab your Selenite. Sprinkle that circle of salt around you. And since we're 5 minutes to curtain, maybe take this time to practice on some diction exercises and maybe do some dragon's breath, because we're definitely going to get on the stage to summon the spirits of the East-West Players Theater. So let's get Holly weird at the East-West Players Theater in Little Tokyo, Los Angeles.
From Omaha, Nebraska, the capital city of the historic Haunted Heartland, my name is Brian Corey, and I invite you to listen to my show, The Necronomicast. Every episode, it is my pleasure to bring you the finest in creepy conversations with filmmakers, actors, television personalities and authors, musicians, scientists, and highly sought-after experts where we explore the mysteries of the paranormal, true crime, and all subjects that inspire what we see in the darkened theater. So sit back, relax, dim the lights as we journey together to a place where monsters dwell, where spirits walk among the living, and darkness shapes our imaginations. Available everywhere you go for podcast entertainment. Join me for every episode of Necronomicast, where I bring you the horror of Hollywood and beyond.
Every theater has a ghost, just like almost every street corner in the city of Los Angeles has a story to tell you. And a lot of those times, those stories can be a ghost story. And one of them actually takes place in a historical and spiritual yet cultural part in downtown Los Angeles, known as Little Tokyo, which found its humble beginnings north side of East 1st Street between Central Avenue and San Pedro Street. You can literally witness the timeline of this area just by starting out at the Queen Hotel, which opened in 1890. And it's one of the most recognizable features of East 1st Street. There's a neon sign glowing with the words Chop Suey. That was the site of the Far East Cafe, which opened in 1935 and quickly became the informal center of the Japanese American community. Walk a little further down and you'll definitely hit up a really delicious ramen shop called Daikuya, and then grab some amazing mochi at the Fugetsu Do Bakery shop, which actually opened in 1903. You can literally taste the history there. Now, Bryce has mentioned this time and time again in past episodes where you could literally peel back a layer in a lot of these areas in Los Angeles, and each layer can literally tell you a story. And a lot of times these stories can be ghost stories. And a slew of them lie further up north down East 1st Street in a little theater known as the East-West Players Theater. Now, before we get to learn more about the theater, we must learn about the East-West Players. They are an Asian American theater organization based out of Los Angeles that was founded in 1965. And it's the nation's first professional Asian American theater organization. It was established by Maku Aramatsu, Ray Creevy, Bialu Kuo, Soon Tek-u, James Hung, Pat Lee, Jun Kim, and so many more, and I'm so sorry if I butchered any of their names. But it is known for its educational programs and, of course, its most notable alumni. For example, Danny Glover, Lucy Liu, and Sandra Oh, just to name a few. Now let's get to learn a little bit about the building itself, just the cliff notes. You see, the East-West Players Theater was originally the First Union Church, and it combined the home of 3 Japanese American congregations, which was completed in 1923. According to the East-West Players website, with the onset of World War II, it was actually in front of this building that residents of the district joined the residents of Terminal Island, whose community had been razed 48 hours after the attack on Pearl Harbor. Residents lined up with a single suitcase allowance, awaiting transportation to join close to 10,000 people sent to the War Relocation Center in Manzanar in 1942. Most of those transported to the internment camps lost all of their property and were unable to return to living in their old community after the war, scattering the population throughout the city. And that's just one story, one layer that lies within this area. Soon after, the building would soon transition to a community center for African Americans arriving from the Deep South in search of work. And eventually, Little Tokyo became Bronzeville and was home to crowded conditions such as breakfast clubs, which were jazz clubs that were known to stay open until dawn. Then we hit 1943, and part of the Zoot Suit riots spread into this area. At the close end of 1945, the Japanese Americans gradually began reestablishing a community center where Little Tokyo remains a very diverse part of central Los Angeles. And then the building located on John Aso Street was damaged in the 1994 Northridge earthquake, leaving it unusable. The Little Tokyo Service Center Community Development Corporation completed a multi-million-dollar renovation of the building in 1998 to house 3 arts organizations: the East-West Players Theater, Visual Communications, and LA Art Corps. Not to mention, Hollywood did hit up this area in the 80s when John Carpenter came knocking on its door to shoot the exterior and part of the interior for the horror film Prince of Darkness. No matter where you are in Los Angeles, you gotta have a touch of Hollywood. Even though the East-West Players Theater is haunted by the ghost of its pasts, it seems that it's literally haunted by its own resident ghosts. And trust me, by the stories I've been told of this place, there's more than one. Now, before we proceed further into this episode, there's one question that many of us, including myself, have asked. Why are theaters haunted? But don't worry. I actually know someone really awesome who can answer this question for us, and that is Professor Kevin J. Wetmore. He's a friend of mine and a coworker at Loyola Marymount University. He's a professor of theater arts and the director of the graduate program with areas of expertise in, what a coincidence, Japanese theater, African theater, Shakespeare, horror theater, Asian cinema, horror cinema, Greek tragedy, stage combat, and comedy. The list goes on and on. He has degrees from Bates College, the University of Leeds, and the University of Pittsburgh, where he completed his doctorate in theater and performance studies. He's also written 2 books, Post 9/11 Horror and American Cinema, which is a really good read, along with Back from the Dead. So, Professor Whitmore, why are theaters so haunted?
Well, theaters are haunted for a few different reasons. One, theaters tend to be historic buildings, so they tend to be older. They tend to be places of great emotion, some real, some acted. But as most actors will tell you, just because it's being acted doesn't mean it doesn't feel real. And actors themselves are highly theatrical people, so why would we stop being that in death? There's also the idea, however, that I love the idea we talk about the ghost light, that we have this light on in the theater, and it's obviously there for safety's sake, but it's also there because performers don't stop performing. And so there's this beautiful thing, I'd like to think, that if we do go on, and I hope we do, that a theater, that there is someone there. They talk about, for example, the friendly ghost at Drury Lane, which is this spirit that on opening night, like, helps people. If you're not on your mark, you feel hands pushing you to where you're supposed to be, or an encouraging pat on the back, and people are like, what the hell? But it's really about, we're, as theater people, we always help each other because we want the show to be great, and that doesn't end with death. So there's also something about the theater itself. When you think about it, it's a dark room. Most of the time when you're performing, you go and you sit in the dark, and there's this one end of it that's all lit up. And so, we, as Shakespeare says, it's horrible imaginings out there. We're sitting and going, what else out there in the dark? I don't know if you know this. The Stroob is allegedly haunted.
Yes, we talked about this slightly here on this, but no one has had, the full body apparition experience. There's one member here who felt weird in the costume shop and had the feeling that he had to get up and leave out of nowhere, which was really weird because he's like, that's never happened. And this one night it happened.
Yeah, supposedly, allegedly, there is an old woman who sits in the back row, who sort of at various times you'll look back and just see someone sitting there and be like, oh, is that someone's mom, or is that, a new faculty member? And then you look back and they're not there anymore. And there's part of me that thinks, well, given the history of the theater, it would probably be Virginia Barnell, just here to make sure things are supposed to be okay, or things are going well, because she's, the mother of the theater's department here. My own weird, spooky moment here actually occurred up on the third floor. And I've never told this story publicly before. I was here, it must have been in 2007 or 2008, because the power went out on campus, and I was here at night after a rehearsal, and it was about 11 p.m., and the entire building, the entire campus just went dark because there was a windstorm. So winds were just blowing across the campus. Very gothic. And all the power went out, and I didn't have a flashlight, but I had a lightsaber in my office. So,
I love this.
And one of those
where it's going.
expensive weird lights that you turn on, you get the full sound effects. So I'm like, I'm going to find my way out of the building with a lightsaber, but I'm also going to check to make sure there's no one else on this floor who doesn't have a light. The Boy Scout in me. So I turn on the lightsaber, I grab my briefcase, close my office door, and I start walking down the corridor right here, and I turn around this corner.
Yeah.
Walk all the way to the end of it, and then I see, as I'm walking, I get about halfway down the corner, and I see this young woman standing there, and she had long hair hanging down in front of her face, and this was back when we had the Pilates lab up here, when dance was still in the building. So I thought it was a young dancer, because she was dressed in shorts and a t-shirt, but I'm like, it's winter, it's windy, but maybe she was in the Pilates lab, and
wow.
So I'm like, hey, do you need help? And she doesn't answer, she just turns away and walks down, because we're a big square here, she turns and walks down the corridor. So I boldly march forth with my lightsaber, turn the corner, and there's no one there, and the stair door isn't closing, and I don't hear anything, and I go, okay, 99% likely this was just a student who got weirded out by, the old scary man with the lightsaber, coming to check on her in the dark. So she might have just vanished and shut the door quickly and quietly so that the bad guy would go away. But there's one small part of me that goes, I don't know.
Right.
I don't know what I saw, and I don't know what that was. So if there is a ghost on this floor, we cool, and if you're ever around when the lights go out, you don't have to run away. I do have some questions, if you don't mind.
Me too.
But exactly. So, the theater itself, just as a place of excitement, a place of life, is also a place of life after death. And lastly, I think twofold, theater people are supernatural people. We don't say the name of the Scottish play in the building.
Of course.
You don't whistle. Everyone has their own rituals. With this generation, they have the playlist that they listen to before they perform. And the rituals must be observed. And so actors are a superstitious bunch. And I don't mean that pejoratively, because I'm one and I do it all too. I have a playlist. So, because I want to be cool like the kids. But long story short, I think it's that superstition combined with the fact that, quite simply, a lot of performers, because they're artists, are also sensitive. And so we tend to be more aware of the things that most of the muggles, and I call people who don't do theater muggles because they have no magic in their lives, most of the muggles might not be able to see or sense. When an actor's on stage and in the moment, yeah, of course they might see Virginia out in the audience there, because whether or not that's actually Virginia or their own projection, whatever the cause of it is, they're connecting to something larger than themselves in the space. as an actor, and that's a good thing. So.
That is. It's like we're conduits.
Yes.
You know, and demanding
Well,
history.
I talk about how actors are mediums. When you think about it, theater is a conversation with the dead. When I stand on stage and say, I have of late, but wherefore I know not, lost all my mirth, I am speaking words that were written 422 years ago. The dead are literally speaking through me. How cool is that? Every actor is a medium in a sense. You know, there's a wonderful book by Marvin Carlson called The Haunted Stage, in which he says the theater is a memory machine that we put on these plays. Lope de Vega. Oh, ay, Lope, mi papi. Lope's really hot. If you don't know Lope, he's this Siglo de Oro playwright from Spain. Shakespeare wrote 40 plays. We have about 38. Lope de Vega wrote around 1,600 plays, and we have 400. Yeah, he's amazing. And he wrote some of the greatest plays you'll ever read. And so, you know, and Lope's writing literally at the same exact time as Shakespeare. He died in 1635. So when we're putting Lope on stage, we're hearing this guy who wrote 400 years ago, and he is speaking through me. When, you know, I get on stage, because I've done training in Japanese theater, I get on stage and I perform plays that were written by Zeami in the 13th century. You know, someone 800 years old is speaking through me. So every actor in that sense is a medium. The dead speak through us and live again on the stage. And when we tell stories that are historically accurate, there really was a Hamlet. Amleth, he was, you know, a Viking man who, the story that Shakespeare does comes from a source, a monk named Saxo Grammaticus, who tells the story of Amleth, the mad prince. Amleth's father died or was killed. Amleth's uncle took over. And Vikings believe that mentally ill people, crazy people, have been touched by the gods and you're not allowed to hurt them. Mm-hmm. So the second the uncle becomes king, Amleth is like, I'm going crazy. I'm going to go full Mel Gibson. And so they're like, well, chain him up outside. Don't let him hurt anyone, but leave him alone because he's been touched by Odin. And eventually Amleth is able to sort of convince other people, my uncle's, you know, needs to go, and he assassinates his own uncle and becomes a very good king. And you can visit the grave of Hamlet on this island off the coast of Denmark, which I think is really cool.
Visit the dead right there.
Yeah, but that's just it. Is now when we're on stage, it's not just Shakespeare speaking the dead. We're also invoking Amleth. When we're on stage, we are invoking the dead. When we do Hamilton, for example, that wonderful popular play, you have the names of at least 32 people who really lived and really died, and every night on Broadway and every night on tour, and every kid who's listening to the soundtrack is invoking the spirits of Hercules Mulligan and John Adams and Washington and Angelica and Peggy, all of whom are real people. And, you know, there's a belief in some cultures that the way we keep the dead alive is by remembering them and by speaking their names and by paying homage to them. And what is theater doing if not that? So we are mediums who bring the dead back to life. We allow the dead to speak. Well, of course, if the dead can come back, they're going to go and hear themselves. They're like, well, let's go see what's going on in there, because they're talking to the dead already.
Right.
It's a welcoming place. It's a happy place, and we have the best parties. So those are all the reasons why, in my estimation, and this is just opinion, theaters are haunted.
Now it's time to set the scene. It's about 8:30 at night, December 30th of 2022, and we're just a few days shy of 2023. So what a way to ring in the new year with a paranormal investigation. It's myself and Bryce waiting for Andy, the director, to allow us entrance. And entering stage right is our friend, medium and practicing santera, Tanya Mercado, who's also an owner of Ashe Imports, and she's been on the podcast. We invited her tonight to do a walkthrough and reading of the entire space. And what we truly love about Tanya is that she's no bullshit. She's the real deal. She wants to come in cold without knowing anything about the history of the place, its stories and people attached to the location, which we truly do respect and appreciate. Entering stage left is our friend, paranormal investigator Matt Lytle, who was a big help and assistance for me. You see, I needed an extra pair of legs, hands, eyes, and intuition, along with expertise, because I was busy trying to set up the equipment for recording our interview with Andy and the rest of the crew. And it was actually pretty perfect because I had a plan. I wanted to eliminate biases from both parties on Tanya and Matt's end, so I purposely put Matt on the opposite side of the theater away from Tanya. What I wanted was to prevent them from crossing paths and sharing certain information about certain floors or certain hotspots. What I wanted them to do was to keep their feelings and what they felt to themselves until the interview, to see if what they felt in those certain areas correlated with the experiences that Andy was going to share of certain coworkers and volunteers of the theater, which definitely worked, because later in the interview, they had a lot to say about what they felt in certain hotspots where a lot of these workers had certain experiences. All right, guys, it's 5 minutes to curtain, and we definitely need to take our seats as we sit down with Andy and the crew to learn more about the history and the ghosts of the East-West Players Theater in downtown Los Angeles, Little Tokyo. Okay, guys, so we've tried to work on our interfacing. We have everything set up in this theater to do our interview with Andy, who's sitting here with us in a round table. We have here seated with us Mark, who is our sound director, right? Music director, yes. Tanya Mercado, our psychic medium, and of course our guest for the podcast today is Matt Lytle. You guys have known him in the past from many interviews and investigations we've done, especially with Chasing Ghosts. So we're going to take it away real quickly with Andy, who runs the East-West Players, and we're sitting inside a very historical place, which is their theater. So Andy, thank you so much for speaking with us and allowing us to do an investigation here. Take it away with the history of this amazing building, because you're giving us so much information. I'm like, wait, hold on. This is great. This is all great. But take it away.
Sure. Mm-hmm. Well, so welcome to the Union Center for the Arts. This is formerly the First Union Church. This is, of course, in historic Little Tokyo, which is one of three remaining daily operating Japantowns in the nation. And you know, this is after years and years of various mass relocations that the Japanese American community has experienced over the years. But as far as I know, this community goes back to the 1800s. You know, there's actually even like the old Family Mart, which, as I understand, was actually an old stable back in, like, you know, I mean, you can imagine this street as, like, you know, Old West, and horses would get reshoed there, and now you can go there to get a soda and some bubble gum. But there's also businesses here that have been owned and run by the same family for over 100 years, like Fugetsudo, which is still the same mochi shop there on First Street. Mm-hmm. And of course, we're here just off of First Street on Judge John Iso Street, which is the First Union Church. It's a very recognizable building with the 4 columns. This was the first Japanese American church built in the nation. And as I understand it, there were 3 different congregations that were like kind of formed in people's garages, more or less, or whatever the equivalent of a garage was in 1920. And they kind of came together and raised the money to build this church and have it be kind of a center for the community in Little Tokyo back in 1920. And I believe they broke ground in 1922, opened their doors in 1923. So we're kind of coming up on what will be the 100th anniversary of the building this coming March.
Oh my gosh.
It will also be the 25th anniversary since it's had its new second life as an arts center. Because we East-West Players, you know, is a 57-year-old company that started off in Silver Lake, really.
In 1967, right?
1965. Yeah, and we had been operating, in various 99-seat houses up until the 1990s, when, of course, the Northridge quake happens, and the building was condemned, but the community kind of rallied around it. You know, there were people who remembered being baptized here or getting married, or there was a gym downstairs. People remembered the basketball gym that in what is now the visual communications office, and they basically kind of rallied around the building, got a historical designation, and were able to apply for FEMA money to have the building renovated and earthquake retrofit. And so the building opened its doors to the public. There was a production of Pacific Overtures, which is a very storied production that has been remounted many times in East-West history, but that was in March of 1998. So it will be the 25th, 100th anniversary for this building and its many lives.
Now, it was a church, and then you had mentioned before, after it was a church, that it was at one point a check-in center for, we hate to bring this up as one of the best histories of Los Angeles, which wasn't the best and glamorous, but I mean, we had several internment camps here.
Sure. Well, it is the history of Little Tokyo, right? And really kind of a testament to the endurance of this community,
right?
And this community's ability to adapt, right? This is kind of one of those things, whether you got it in school or not. When Order 906, Executive Order 9066 came out, it was basically an order for all Japanese Americans to pack up a bag, only what you can carry, and we're sending you off to camp, which is basically a completely unconstitutional incarceration. But where they started with were any temples, any churches, any community centers, any place that community leadership might gather. And so, of course, the army commandeered every temple, every church, and they kind of chose this building to kind of set up their offices so that they could basically run the relocation, right? So, there are photos. If you go over to JANM, the Japanese American National Museum, you can find photos of people lined up outside of this building waiting to get tagged before they were sent out on buses and then shipped off to Santa Anita Racetrack, which was their check-in spot, and just, we're going to put you in these horse stalls until we figure out what to do with you before we build the internment camps in Poston and Tule Lake and
right.
et cetera, et cetera.
Bryce, remember Pomona, Fairfax, how they had activity there too, because it was a place where Japanese internment prisoners were held at one point, especially after they took them out of the camps. So that's pretty interesting, like how everything's just so interconnected here.
Truly, yeah.
Now, after it was this check-in site, we are also brushed with the TB pandemic, which started in 1895 and lasted until 1957, Southern California being the mecca of the sanatorium capital of the nation. Because if you thought about it, everybody wanted to, and still comes here for the sunshine and now the sanatoriums. How was this place affected by the TB pandemic, and were there any, or at one point, was this a place where they held patients or treated them?
I don't know that specifically. What I have been told, and what I've just done in my own personal research, is that so after the Japanese Americans were moved out, and of course, all of Little Tokyo is just empty. It's just a ghost town. But then you have this whole migration of African Americans who are migrating for factory jobs for the war effort. And of course, there are heavy miscegenation laws that basically don't allow them to live anywhere else, and those laws do not apply to here. So,
red taping.
So then you have a huge concentration and a lot of overcrowding of African Americans who are living in all the tenements here in Little Tokyo. And an organization called Pilgrim House sets up in this church. As I understand it, doing a lot of kind of social service stuff, people who are new into town, helping them find place or find tenement housing, maybe possibly makeshift hospitals, or even health check-ins, maybe some daycare and stuff like that. And Pilgrim House operated here pretty much until the end of the war, until about 1946, when the Japanese American community starts coming back and going, whoa, all these people are here. What do we do? And as I understand it, the Pilgrim House felt decided in and of itself that this was not their building. Wow. And they basically said, we're going to move out. And they went and found another location over in Chinatown that they shared with a Filipino community organization. I don't know what the site was for that, but they moved out and kind of granted the building back to the Union Church congregation. And this continued to be their base of operations until the 1950s, when the city again took eminent domain over most of the land and called most of Little Tokyo blight, and bulldozed. There's the big parking lot you can see just behind the building. This was all more tenement housing buildings, storefronts. In fact, I think the old Rafu Shimpo, which is the still running Japanese American community newspaper, used to have their presses and their offices over there. But they bulldozed everything so they could put up the old Parker Center police station, if you remember, like Dragnet. With the loading dock side, the basically, as we like to say, the ass side of the police station to this community, and it was kind of very symbolic of, or at least symbolic of how this community felt and how the city kind of felt about this community. That was now, multiracial and, long-standing. So then the building sat empty for a number of years. We have talked to people who were involved in the filming of the John Carpenter film Prince of Darkness, which made this building somewhat famous to a lot of people. We still have horror fanatics who, walk up and say, "Hey, can I take my picture here?"
Wow. Tanya holding up the DVD.
I'm gonna do that when I leave. I'm just kidding.
But people remember this building in the 1980s, and some of the cast. We've talked to Dennis Dunn and stuff, and he says he remembers when they pulled up, and it was all homeless, and it was just it was Skid Row, basically.
Right.
But they had to clear out some of the homeless people who were squatting in the building, along with some of the vermin and chase away pigeons and stuff like that, before they filmed and set up for filming the movie. But presumably those squatters were still here, all the way up until 1990. Was it 1994?
94, yeah.
94 was the Northridge quake. And at which point, parts of the roof caved in. Even if you look around the outside, you can kind of see, chunks of brick, particularly around the corners.
Oh my gosh.
Where you can see, they had the remason, all of that. And as I was saying before, it was kind of the community kind of being very tenacious and saying, look, this is an opportunity for us to reclaim space that had been taken from us. So they applied for that FEMA money and, contacted East West Players and Visual Communications, which runs the Asian American Film Festival, or Los Angeles Asian Pacific Film Festival. That they have their offices downstairs, as well as LA Art Corps, which runs the art gallery in the front lobby. And we've been here, for ever since.
Ever since. Okay, so now we have the history out of the way. Let's Bryce, as you mentioned too, what have you always said about the city of Los Angeles when it comes to hauntings and history?
And especially in a place like this, there's so much history. Literally, the building bears the scars of that history, emotional, physical. And you had said right before we started recording, the history of LA is not as glamorous. Hearing that they were kicking out real homeless people to film, that is the most LA story I have ever, that's what they do every year for the Academy Awards. We're still doing that. They clean out Hollywood Boulevard, they put the red carpet down, it looks super glamorous as long as it doesn't rain, and then all of those people matriculate back in and go back to living their actual lives, but we got our shot. So all of those things, it's just such a very special. You can feel it when you're in the building. That history breathes through to where we are now.
Exactly. How I found out about this theater was through a mutual contact, Wes, who opened up this whole story about the theater with a ghost story. And one of them is tied to your theater ghost, because every theater has one.
Truly.
Obviously.
It's just me in the wings, but it's fine. I'm everywhere.
Well, this is the thing, right? I would call myself a healthy skeptic, but I also, I'm also wise enough to know that there are things that cannot be explained. I have met many people who believe things with a certain amount of conviction that I believe you. I believe you believe you've seen these things. And of course, coming into this building and kind of inheriting this, I'm coming up on my 10th anniversary. Wow. So
congratulations.
So thank you. So so February will mark 10 years for me at East West Players. Oddly enough, now I'm the old guy now, and the keeper of the lore.
I can't even commit to a pair of shoes that long.
But so that's the thing, is that talking to a lot of people who have come through East West, a lot of people who have been my heroes, right? This is the thing, is the great thing about East West Players is so many people have cut their teeth here.
Yes.
In times when there were no other places for Asian American actors to cut their teeth.
100%.
You can go down the list of, John Cho, Daniel Day Kim, Lucy Liu apparently was an assistant director here. Sandra Oh was an understudy for
I saw all their pictures, all their headshots on the second level. That's amazing.
Yeah.
That this is where they got their start. That this was their, this was their building. This was their place.
Yeah.
Now, starting here in this theater, what have people felt? Who is the resident ghost? And when was the last time he said hello?
I kind of start with my whole skeptic spiel, because
of course.
I have to, again, I worked in a lot of theaters in San Diego. Some of them had, wacky stuff. It's like, oh, okay, so maybe there was an earthquake that day, or okay, there's some bad wiring here. When I came into this building, the first year, I would say, when I would go up to I would work late nights. It was the job was much bigger than the job description. You know how this is. It's a theater job. I started to notice late nights after everyone else left but me, and it's just me in the building, and I'm trying to figure out what this budget was or what that expense was. Yeah. And I'd walk up the stairs to the third floor dressing rooms, and turning down that hallway, always just and I keep I would rationalize it. It's okay, well, it's just because the lights aren't on, or it's it's because the exit sign is red. It just looks imposing. But it's it was always consistent. I'd turn that corner, and I really wouldn't want to look at the mirrors. And that's the most vivid it ever got. But and it was just an uneasy feeling. I laugh at myself. Then, I would say when we started having board game nights here on the stage, and I remember, I was setting some stuff up, or I'm putting out pizza or whatever. I'm trying to be a good host. And one of my friends...
Yeah.
I know, seriously.
Come on, board game night.
Is there a charcuterie board involved? Can we, please?
But I remember specifically my friend Paul kind of coming up to me and going, "Hey, are you going to the bathroom anytime soon?" I'm like, "Oh no, I'm trying to set up the pizza and stuff like that." I say, "Oh, okay. You want to go to the bathroom, maybe?" And I'm like, "With you?" Well, no. It's fine. It just. I don't want to go up there alone. And I was like, "Wait, go up where? And where specifically, and why?" And and then that was the first thing that I started to just kind of wait a minute. Okay, so it's not just me. And there's a consistency to it.
Right.
I started asking other friends, and then other friends would go, "Yeah, I don't like that hallway. I don't know why. It's weird."
As you're telling us this, I'm looking at our friend Matt, and his eyes just grew wide. I'm going to circle here to Matt. Matt, you did a walkthrough as we were trying to struggle with our interfacing. What did you feel in that specific location that Andy was talking about?
Well, it's just nuts because that was the very first area that I was walking towards. But it was as soon as I looked down the hallway, it's like something turned my head and made me go up the stairs to the fourth floor. You know what I mean? And I was on the 4th floor. I'm like, why didn't I go down that hallway? You know, usually you go down the first hallway you see, the first rooms you see, but something told me just to keep going up. Do not, like, turn your head and keep walking. So then I went back down, and then I walked down the hallway. I turned my head towards the 3rd floor green room and all the mirrors, and I was like, this is going to be the most active room in this whole theater. And that was the first area I went to in my walkthrough. So that's what I felt.
Damn, this is why I have you here. This is why I was like, I needed Matt to come. Yeah. Oh, and I can't wait to get Tanya's take on it. She was already receiving so many things. But after those occurrences and those stories, what else happened?
Well, I just started asking around, right? And the more I started talking to folks, the more I just pick up, there are a number of stories. There even just the general office. Like one day I was up when we used to have the administrative offices up on the 4th floor, and I hear someone says, "Oh, BO Ghost is back." Like apparently there is a BO Ghost that has a particular odor, and he hangs out up on the 4th floor and he'll visit folks, but. Well, and the thing is, the more you kind of collect things, and you can kind of like start sorting them out into stuff, right? So BO Ghost is probably also consistent with what we call the caretaker, or this is so as we understand in the last days of this still being the church, there was an old man who had been the caretaker of this building, lived in the building for much of its life. Mr. Takahashi, some of the folks from the historical museum still remember him chasing them out as they were playing in the courtyard and stuff. This grumpy old Japanese man, who would take care of the building and lived here. A number of stories that I've heard of people kind of citing an old Japanese man kind of walking the grounds sometimes. The other thing is that there are many stories of actors and other people who have spotted an old Japanese man sitting up there in the far house right rows.
Oh my God!
Up in the balcony.
While I was trying to deal with this interfacing, something kept on telling me that to look up there. Like I felt like I heard some commotion up there. Okay, thank you. It was like, I don't know if you guys saw me. Like I kept on turning over here, and I was like, "What is up there?"
Well, and there's like the stories that I have been told and I have used for when we do like haunted tours, right? Like the classic one is apparently a woman came in for auditions, came up on stage, gave a bad audition, walked out to the monitor and complained like, "Look, these are equity auditions. These are supposed to be closed. You're not supposed to allow anyone to observe." And it just completely unnerved me. And they're like, "Miss, the only people who were there were the director and they were sitting at the table." And it's like, "No, I saw an old Nisei man sitting up in the balcony." And they walked up to the balcony. The door was locked and there was no one there. And she said, "I swear to God, I saw this old Nisei man."
Wow.
There have been other ones where,
that's a good way to blame. I'm going to use that. Like, I'm sorry, this is an equity audition. It's not my fault. I cannot be held responsible. That's great. What a genius. I love her.
Blame it on the ghost.
Yeah, I will.
Blame it on the ghost.
God knows it's not me.
I mean, there are plenty of audition halls in LA that are definitely sketchy.
Yes. I only hear facts.
You can keep that one. But yeah, there's other ones where some of the cast members from Joy Luck Club remember the stage manager saying, "Okay, it's a small house tonight. They only sold the orchestra levels, so there's no one in the balcony, so you can save your voices a little bit." And they did the show, and of course the cast all saw an old Nisei man up in the balcony and a small child, and they're like, they went to the stage manager. "How come you said that there was no one in the balcony? We totally saw someone." And the stage manager was like, "No, pretty sure they didn't sell any tickets, and then the doors were locked." So that's a consistent one.
Wow.
Right. So that's kind of the stuff with Mr. Takahashi. The BO stuff, the watching over us from the balcony, and walking the grounds, and
So I heard you also have some animal ghosts here, apparently.
Some animal ghosts.
Yeah, I was told, I think it was by Wes, that some people have claimed to have seen either a cat or a dog roaming
really?
around the orchestra section. Yeah.
Oh, that's new to me. I haven't heard that one. That's
Or maybe it could be like, alley cats coming in. They're just like, hey, we're squatting here.
I mean, I know my cat that I've had for the last 4 years came to the theater and yowled at me. Adopted me from outside.
The universe always sends a cat.
They always do.
No animals that I know of, but I mean, definitely, there have been more vivid apparitions of people who have bumped into a person in the hallway and turned around and no one was there. Wow. I got to say, I'm a little jealous because my technical director, Kathy, has only worked. She's coming up on her first year, and she has said that she's already, heard sounds, heard footsteps, had the feeling that she was being watched and would just not like it. We've had wardrobe people who were working late, building costumes, and heard loud 3 claps in the next room, and of course it was only the 2 of them in the building, and they were like, "All right, we're done."
Yep, that has happened.
Yeah. What are some other ones? Basically, we just did a show called The Brothers Paranormal, which is a play about a pair of brothers who are paranormal investigators.
That was such a good show. I came here to see it. It was so amazing, and it touched my heart because I'm like, both of the actors who portrayed a couple, they're from New Orleans in the show, and I'm like, I'm from New Orleans, and it's about ghosts. So yeah, it was a great show, but apparently some things happened.
Well, really, it was more like. In preparation for this, I saw the opportunity of, I'm going to go through and I'm going to start really cataloging, some of these stories, because I hadn't really formally put them down on paper or on in a spreadsheet, because I'm a production manager. But yeah, so there was a Facebook post that I did a few years back where I just took a photo of that hallway and I just put it out to the Facebook world, hey, those first couple of years, this hallway always gave me a weird feeling. Share with me your story. And it was just a flood. It was a flood. It was instantly 50 some odd posts from, and there were people who I know, and then they tagged other people who I didn't know. And suddenly I got stories about a number of people talking about how if you find change in the theater, it will always be 11 cents, one dime, 1 penny. Which I'm like, okay, that's weird. And I had to think back. I'm like, okay, I don't know if I've had that one. There were other. What were some of the other ones?
A lot of they'll whisper your name.
Yeah, whisper your name. Hearing voices, whispering of names, I basically kind of cataloged it of, okay, so these are the kind of things that we experience on the 4th floor. These are all the various things. One of the best stories actually is from an actor named Kennedy Cabaceres, and I guess they were after a show, and he's sitting at one of the dressing room stations there, and he hears someone whisper his name right in his ear, and he hears Kennedy, and he looks up and he calls over to the other actor. He's like, Ken, are you messing with me? And it's like, no, I didn't say anything. He's like, so then he just looks back and is concentrating on his makeup station. And he hears it again, and when he looks up, his earring drops in front of his face.
Oh no!
Didn't Alden have one? Another a floating pencil or something like that?
Oh my gosh!
That is cool.
Do you remember that?
Tanya's like, that is cool, a floating pencil.
Oh yeah, then Marilyn Takuda. Marilyn Takuda used to be the education outreach manager here. And she has she has a number of stories. She has a story of walking down the stairs, passes by that same hallway, and she just kind of thought she heard a voice or something, so she stopped and looked down, down the hallway, and she's like, hello? And she heard a small 10-year-old child's voice, and she heard, hi. And she's like, is there someone there? Yeah. And she was like, okay, I'm gonna
closing.
She also had another instance where she was working at her desk that was at the top of the stairwell, and she looked away to her computer, and apparently she had a mug that kind of flew off her desk for about a yard. And then Tim Dang, who was our artistic director at that time, was like, Mayor, why did you do that? It's like, I didn't do that. I was looking over here at the computer. It just flew off the desk. And, Tim was always a skeptic.
A lot of people here have had like different types of experiences, and a lot of it's intelligent and even full body.
Yeah.
I'm ready to go towards you, Mark. I want to know your experiences as well, and then we're going to hit Tanya and what she collected. I'm going to sit here.
Really don't have as many experiences. I mean, gosh, one of them was I did not understand why it happened, and the other one could have been just a trick of the light. But for our last musical here, back in January, we did a production of Assassins, and we did a song which featured a lot of banjo. And at the end of the song, the banjo player placed his banjo back on the guitar rack. And then, we were sitting there. It was already a scene, so it was all quiet. But then one of the strings just plucked on its own. And I looked up at the guitar player. I'm all thinking, what are you doing? It's a scene, But he's sitting there, like just sitting back, relaxed. And then we both looked at at the banjo, and, there was nothing on it that could have made that noise. We were just kind of, what is going on? How did that play? That was unexplainable. Also, another instance when we were having one of our board game nights, I just know, like, sometimes I'll look out into the balcony because I just kind of am wondering if anything is going to appear. But from the corner of my eye, I'm pretty sure I saw like a quick shadow figure just move.
There's a lot of that. There's a lot of
shadow people.
Like a shadow that just kind of disperses just in the corner of the eye, or
Right, and I was pretty sure I saw it, but it could have been a trick of the light. But
did you hear about Randy's story, Randy Kiaya?
Oh yeah. I mean, you're better at telling the story.
Well, there's another pit story, and he was a pit piano player playing on a keyboard, and in the middle of a show, the synthesizer just started cycling through voices. So he lost control. He's like playing, and like suddenly it's violin, suddenly it's piano, suddenly it's cello, and he's like, I'm not doing anything. I don't know why it's cycling. And he's like, he looks at the music director, who was Scott Nagatani, and he's like, theater ghost.
We're trying to work.
Keep going.
Water bottles.
During a show, you gotta do what you gotta do, bro.
So keep going.
All right, I'm going to pass the mic over to Tanya. We've had her on our show. We've had her on several investigations, and I wanted her to come in and do a walkthrough. Keep in mind that we do not tell Tanya anything about the history, or anything. She comes in completely blind of the place, but you picked up on so many things that definitely had a correlation. So Tanya, what did you pick up?
So I had my tour guide and I, who's very good because he didn't tell me anything. Like, I'm talking and he's like, and I'm like, okay. So I definitely picked up on the energy with where the dressing rooms are. And I even turned around and asked him, I was like, is something going on in here? Like, does somebody scare somebody in here? Does something happen in here? But since we got here and we started walking, I was telling him that I kept hearing over and over, this isn't what it used to be. So then I kept getting a real church feel. That's why I was like, this was a church, right? And I asked him once, and he was like, do you want me to tell you? I was like, no, don't tell me. We'll just keep walking. We'll just keep walking. Forget it. And then I believe it's the place that is now the office, where we were at the offices.
Okay.
The fourth floor.
Yeah, there was like in the green, there was like a presence that felt. It was weird. It almost felt like levels, because when I started at the fourth floor, it was very masculine, the energy. It was very like almost protective of the situation. And then as I started to come down more, it got lighter. Like I felt it lighter. But definitely the I guess the staircase that we took to get there, I definitely felt the presence of a man. I was telling him this is a masculine energy. There's a man, and who doesn't like change. So it could be the caretaker, it could be the person who was here a long time. Because the building, I agree with what you say, buildings definitely carry a lot of emotion. That's why if you leave houses abandoned, they fall apart. Nobody knows why, they just fall apart. They're missing the human, the emotion of it, right? But the building definitely has a lot of history, and every time I like close my eyes, the way I see things, it changes. So it's a church. And then I was going to ask you, which I forgot to ask you, if it was ever a hospital or something to do with like, because I see people, this has to be in the 30s and 40s now that you gave me the timeline. They show me their shoes. That's the only way I'm able to get timelines. And I love shoes, but sometimes I'm not that great at the timeline of shoes. But they'll show me that so I know it's not now, right? But I definitely see people like in some kind of hospital setting or administering something. And then the gentleman who was trying to come through and talk to me, who was telling me that he was like, had something to do with the founding of this or the building of this, who was telling me he was an actor, who was telling me about a lot of the injustices. That's the word I wanted to use. The injustices that happened to the community as a whole because of the things he was showing me. And then I asked you if the person on here was Asian and you told me he was Japanese, because I want to tell you something. The person who I saw looked kind of like this in this part. That's why I was like, oh, is he not? Because I definitely see a couple here. I don't know if they were husband and wife, but there's definitely a couple here. When we walked up to the back to, I was going to say where the organ played. I don't know why. I was drawn to this side. Like I came to this side and I was like, oh, okay, well this guy, there's a ghost here, right? And when we went into the front, when I saw the actual windows, I was like, it is a church. I told them, it is a church. What are you doing? But it felt, in that front where the two windows are, there was like an energy in the middle of it. And I told him, I don't know why I see a turnstile, like where a lot of people come in and out, but it's not now. It was like a lot of people in and out, like a lot of energy. I even asked him, do they turn off lights here? Do you guys just see shadows? I told him, all you're seeing is a shadow. Because I feel like there's definitely one, and I don't know why, but when it was abandoned, I don't know if there was times that people might have like been very hurt in here, or maybe even the city got called because maybe somebody expired in here, something. Because I see the timeline is so weird. So it goes from looking like the picture you showed me to then almost looking like a hospital. Then it goes, it's bad, like it's falling apart within itself. And then that's when they're like, oh, there was people, loitering, living in here, doing things in here. And then it switches again, like it's constantly, it's kind of like and then they show, I don't know, they show me on this side of the building, which is now a parking lot, they show me like a yard, or like if there was apartments that had little yards or little gardens or little something, but it's on this side. Because when you said this wasn't the parking lot anymore, right? I saw like, it's gonna sound crazy, but it kind of looks like the projects in New York.
Sure.
That's what but they had a little bit of a yard, and it was a lot of people living together. Like they keep stressing to me that there was like a lot of people living together. Like it was not, I'm Mexican, okay? So, but
Tú sabes.
yeah, I know. But I'm like a weird Mexican. I only have 2 brothers and sisters, that's it. But it's like, they keep showing me things so I can relate, but a lot of people living together, and just a lot of, and then there was a military reference that I couldn't sort out, but I almost feel like the energy in the front where you walk into, you have it gated, I think. I didn't even notice. It's gated, right? But you can't come in. All of that in the front, you guys should, if you ever want to give a haunted tour again, you should have them sit out there for a little bit when it's very dark, because there's a lot of energy pooling in the front. Because I feel like there's a lot of people walking around here.
Wow.
I
think we should do something outside before we close the investigation tonight.
Of course you want to.
I'm going to tell you something that I found was Mr. Takahashi's first name, Yoshizumi George Takahashi.
I actually don't know. I only know.
Okay, you keep on seeing a couple. This is what I found in my research. The Takahashi family was, the patriarch was Yoshishumi George Takahashi, who passed away in 1959. He was the first to immigrate to the U.S. in 1907. He was married to his wife, Yeiko, who passes in 2017. They do have 2 sons who end up enlisting into the military. They actually had 7 children together. He and his family are incarcerated into Postum Incarceration Camp in Parker, Arizona during World War II before being released. And they continue to move and live in Los Angeles. So I don't know if during that time he was working, possibly with his wife here, but that's the only Takahashi information I could find in terms of that family living by that name here in Los Angeles. And it's funny because when I pulled this information up, I'm getting pictures of the theater. So could that be a possibility that it wasn't just Mr. Takahashi? Could it also be him and Ye that you're also seeing?
I mean, definitely there's a couple. So I don't know, and that she's little. The other thing is that what happens with me too is sometimes I pick up on other people's things, like I did with, and then there's a female with him, and they're both Asian. It's just like, right? So, but the couple that's here is definitely older, because that gentleman, the one who was the caretaker, he was older when he passed. He wasn't like, he had been here a long time, but he seems very, I want to say grumpy. He wants to stay set in his ways, and his wife seems like more low-key, if that's his wife, like very low-key, you know?
So I'll share with you this, that kind of leading up to the show, we actually invited another investigation team who did an investigation here as well. And I gotta say, it was a really fascinating situation. He, like you, did not do any kind of research into the building, so he came in cold. The other 2 guys set up a lot of cameras. We had like 8 cameras set up that were broadcasting through Twitch, so that other people could observe the cameras and all that. And when we were ready to bring him into the building, I went downstairs, and even before I could say hello to him, he said to me, I'm already in contact with the caretaker, the gardener. The gardener, but you think of him as the caretaker. He's here, and he wants you to know he's not happy about like the weeds that are growing up in the cracks, and he really would like to see some flowers or something blooming. He misses seeing things blooming on the grounds, and we actually ended up, before opening that last show, we bought 4 new planters and
Maybe that's a reference to where he was like, oh, the garden, the yard, but I don't think it's like there's a lot of people who think that those kind of things are like not good to have around, or the spirits are not good to have around. He doesn't want to do anything. He's not doing anything malicious.
That's what he said too. He said like he just observes, he just watches.
He's just watching, and then when things are not the way he's used to it, is when he's like, hey, I don't like it. But I think that it's more of the history of the building, his history here. I get the feeling that he spent more time here than at home, if that makes sense. Yeah. And I feel like this is home. So he went back to where he feels like home.
Are you talking about the grumpy spirit? Or these 2 different people?
There's 2 different people here, too, because I asked him if there was somebody who had to do something with your production company who passed away. And this person also presented like a masculine energy and kind of moody. I don't know if it's...
So funny. I mean, I
have
a guess as well.
Who is it? Who is it? Who could it be?
Oh, it feels like Mako.
Yeah. And neither of us have met Mako, but we've heard stories of Mako.
We just know of Mako being, very set in his ways, and he commands respect,
So Mako was the first artistic director of East West Players. Now, he never worked in this building, though, right?
No.
Yeah, he lived until, he was a voice actor on Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Oh, wow.
He was the voice of Uncle Iroh, if you know that reference. But so a very storied actor. One of the first Asian Americans to be nominated for a Tony and for an Oscar too, right?
Is he the one who was getting upset because I didn't know who he was or what?
Oh, I mean, that was our guess.
Yeah, I don't know, but
because when I tried to say he was in my mind, like the conversations go in my mind, obviously, right? Yeah. And I was like, oh, he's an actor, and then he was like, no. Like, I have this and this and this. Like, you're so dumb. Like, I did this and this and this. And then that's funny that you said that he did a voice acting, because I thought I heard him sing.
Oh, okay.
Well, yeah, I mean... Yeah.
I thought I heard him sing.
He was on Broadway.
Like, classically, not singing in the shower. And then he was very specific, because when he sung, I was like, oh, he sings. And then he was like, no, I like award-winning sing. Like, I do this.
Sounds like an actor.
And I was like, okay.
Yeah. I mean, when you said actor, and that kind of personality, that's who we thought. And he also had mentioned earlier that, you were saying that a founder...
Yeah.
And he was
the
of that. Yeah, he was the founding team that found East West.
Oh, you're very good. You played it very close to the chest when I was telling you all these things. Good job.
Well, I mean,
I like it that way, and I like that he went with me, because I forget, because they come at me very quickly, and then to add to that, we all have our own spiritualities that try to come through, and so then it gets very complicated.
Right. I mean, this is my interpretation. I'm not sure, but maybe that.
Well, he's definitely an actor, and not and like he wants to say he's like an artist. Like
you mentioned this too, Bryce, how of course Los Angeles ghosts are going to be the type of ghosts they're going to remind you what kind of actor they are, or actor they are.
There's no ceiling.
Well, he has awards, because he's showing me a mantle,
But you'll never
and he
be
has
done
awards,
with attention.
and he has things that are awards that are put in gold, like it's gold colored. So these are awards that he received for doing different things, because he's showing me that he has I'm not the guy on the McDonald's commercial. This is some serious acting going on here. This is not. He's showing me a mantle. So. Well, good on you, sir.
I want to pan the mic real quickly to Matt, because I don't want to lose too much time on our investigation. Matt had came in at the last minute. I needed someone to help me do a walkthrough. Matt, you are an established paranormal investigator, and thank you so much for coming in at the last minute to help me do a walkthrough.
You're welcome.
You picked up on so many things that I kept on seeing your eyes widen every time Andy would mention something. You're like, yes, I felt that there. Yes, I felt that there. You really didn't have any knowing about a lot of the entities or locations that are very active here. You came in kind of cold yourself, but what did you pick up upon your walkthrough and your readings?
Well, yeah, I mean, like you said, I'm glad I didn't come in knowing any of the history or especially the paranormal history. And when you come in, you set your equipment down, and it's usually do a walkthrough with, the owner or somebody who works there, or, a teammate. And just going by yourself, at least by myself, really opened myself up, right? Mm-hmm. So, like I said earlier in this podcast, going up to these stairs over to our right, towards the green rooms, I had no idea that was the green rooms. I just saw a staircase, and I was drawn there. And like I said earlier, I just oddly walked past the third floor hallway that apparently is extremely active. Went to the fourth, and it's funny because when Tanya said that she felt this masculine energy, I could not agree more. You walk on it. I walked in, and it was like something was telling me respect this room, show respect.
That's the same thing I got.
Yeah. Very respected. I put my hands in my pockets. I didn't touch anything, even though there's water bottles on the table. Then I walked to the very corner, and I saw this door that said do not enter. And I'm and sometimes I'm ooh, let's enter. I was nope, I'm not going to. Just going to turn back around. And like you said, the staircase, and then I got to the third floor, and completely different energy.
Right, it shifts really fast.
Shifts so fast. It was just walking from one country to another, just like that, Jumper, the movie Jumper.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it felt like. Hayden Christensen, shout out. We used to love that movie.
That is a deep cut.
Yeah.
This is why I'm so glad you came in late, because Tanya did her walkthrough and then you came in later and did yours. And that's so amazing how you both had correlations with certain areas. It's astonishing.
Can I just mention one other thing? Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, up on that 4th floor, there are a number of photos of Mako up, like, on those shelves up above. And there are a number of his kind of, like, various cine honors and stuff along the wall. Like, in that stairwell headed up to the 4th floor, actually.
You want to know that when I walk up, you can ask him, I look at the floor, and I don't look around because I don't want to see it.
Sure.
I want to tell you something. I'm a chicken. I have to be scared by a ghost. I don't like to be startled. It's a conundrum, right?
Sure.
So I'm very, like, I will look at the floor. I will look at my own self. I don't want to see any, because sometimes they present themselves to you and they're fine, right? And they look like you and they look like me. And sometimes they present themselves to me and they don't look like that. And that's an image that is very hard for me to take out of my head. Sure. And it's not like they look like poltergeist. It's not like that either. But it's just something that is like, I mean, I have insomnia already. And then when the vibration goes higher, I talk faster. So when I'm talking, I go, but I didn't see, but I'd like to see.
Yeah.
Now that I'm not scared.
Well, real quickly, we're going to do a quick walkthrough with Andy. I like to see the theater with Bryce. And then we're going to mark the key areas where to do our EVP sessions and close it, close our investigation outside, since, I mean, Tanya was picking up on a lot of activity too. Yeah. Andy, is it possible that maybe in certain areas we can have the lights off?
Yeah.
Bryce, how do you feel?
I
always
will have my flashlight on.
Matt, you wanted to share something?
No, it was just more about where they see the full body apparitions, because I'm going to set a camera up and we're just going to roll the whole time we're here.
Perfect.
And hopefully capture something. But I did want to add something. It was weird that you said up there and those two seats is where people, because when I walked up there, when you guys were all talking on here, I turned to the right and I just envisioned myself sitting there and like enjoying a show. Like if I were to pick a seat watching a show, it'd be up there, because that's just the most like
it's weird up there, right?
Chill.
Because when I walked up there, I'm like, where's the organ player? And then I started looking, I'm like, oh, there's a ghost here. Okay. But it was very nonchalant. I was like, oh, there's a ghost here. Okay.
Think about that. So you're sensing that presence that's attached to music? Or?
Well, it was I'm not sure. It was two things. When I walked up there, I was like, in my mind, I was like, oh, the organ's going to be here, or where's the organ player, and then
do you get a masculine or feminine attachment to either that, or?
I would have to go back up. It was it was very matter of fact. Like, where's the organ player? And then, oh, there's a ghost here. And then I kept walking. I was very like.
You mentioned like feeling more feminine energy.
As we walked that way, I told him there's like a feminine energy here. There's a feminine energy here.
That's what I heard in one of the stories
the issue
too.
Is, I don't know. You could cut this out if you're uncomfortable. The issue is that I picked up on a feminine energy with him, who he knows who it is. And that feminine energy is almost of the same age of the one that I pick up here. Does that? And they're both little, and they're both like kind of dainty, I want to say. But it's hard because, as we all get older, we get smaller. Smaller. So, but when I went up there, it was very matter of fact, like, oh, the organ, and then, oh, there's a ghost here, and then I just turned around and I was like, okay, let's just. It was very like, because it wasn't alarming to me. It was, the one upstairs was very like, why are you here? But the one over here, it was more like, oh, you're here, I'm here. Okay.
So I mean, I'm just going to share with you what that last investigation to me experience and see if it rattles anything amongst you. So he said that he got a lot of kind of momentary, kind of what he referred to as like momentary impressions. So like certain spaces were charged with an event, like up in that far corner. What he was describing was very close to what sounded like the Northridge quake, with like dust clouds and people not being able to breathe, and maybe people trying to escape. Which was different than, that corner where he did sense kind of
chill.
The really chill,
right.
Really? The watcher. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Weird.
He also said, there were different impressions. Like he did also see a a hospital, like lines of cots.
That's what I saw. It was like a bunch of cots.
Yeah. He got that.
He should call me.
He got that in particular at the entrance on the first floor, where the gallery is now. And he really wanted to go in to kind of explore that, to kind of get what that was.
Where we couldn't go.
Yes.
Where we couldn't go, yeah. But in terms of presences, right, that weren't just, activated impressions or like moments, he sensed 4 very distinct like presences. One was the caretaker, Mr. Takahashi, watcher guy. He referred to. He saw a playful.
Child. Was it child?
We referred it to child, but he was more careful about it just being playful, and so that there was a playful presence in the dressing rooms, and he started trying to see if he could just rattle them just by playing peekaboo, and so he was just going peekaboo through the costumes. And then he stumbled across a second presence up in that dressing room that was just really not happy at all, to the point that
annoyed them.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, we have a video of him as he's going through, trying to play with that other presence, and he's going peekaboo, peekaboo, and then he goes to go peekaboo again, and he just goes and he like talks to it was that visceral where he like recoiled, and he turned to the other guy who was sitting at the table with the box, the spirit box, and he's like, "Don't move." And in the video, it could be a dust particle, but there looked like an orb that moved in a weird way. But and then that fourth presence that he identified, which was he actually wanted to come back with another medium who was female, because he sent a distinctly female presence who was very musical, possibly in a white dress, maybe 20s haircut, and like wasn't sure if she was a piano player or an organ player or something, but he was trying to kind of unpuzzle that one.
Wow, that's so interesting that we both picked up on things that are that's very interesting.
I mean, there was one thing that I felt might have correlated with
I'm not
what
playing peekaboo though.
Yeah.
with what you were mentioning earlier about your neck. I mean, the medium that came before did mention that he felt that someone did take their own life here in that manner. So
That's so funny because it's not funny if that happens. I want to take
Wait,
that back.
is that up in the dressing room also? Or?
well, that's
It's up because when we were walking, I kept looking up, and I kept expecting I kept expecting to see something, not
You picked that up
not
too,
a real
Matt?
thing, but I kept looking up.
Why am I looking up?
And even
I don't
when we
look
came
up
in here,
and then I walk upstairs. You don't do
when
that.
we came in here, I kept looking up.
Interesting.
And before I got here, that's why I like to mention the things that happened to me before, because sometimes, everybody's a skeptic, right? I'm a skeptic too. If I get a psychic and they tell me something, I'm like, no, tell me more.
Sure.
I'm the worst, right? So when I was getting ready to come, I was taking a shower and I was like, oh my God, my neck really hurt, but it's the base of my neck. And I was like, that is so, and I even thought, am I getting a cold? And I was like, oh. Right. So then I was in the car and I was talking to somebody, and they were like, oh, whatever. I mentioned where I was going, and I was like, my neck really hurts. I don't know what I did. Then when we came in and we walked through, I'm okay now. But it was so bad. It was the base of my neck just hurt so bad. It was really weird. That's why I had asked if you knew if anybody had also expired here.
So I'll also say another just friend, an actress who I know, and said she has some sight. I'm not sure what level of developed it is, but she came by one day to. This is Dawn. She came by one day to see if she could pick up on anything, and she went into one of the bathrooms and immediately saw an image of what she thought was someone who looked like a homeless guy with a ton of needles in him. And then she went to the other one and thought she saw someone hanging.
So you're telling me don't use the restroom?
I'm wondering if we can find a documented death in archives. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, maybe if you dig through.
We could dig deeper. Yeah.
I mean, someone said.
There you go.
There you go.
Didn't you mention that you thought that there was like people that came here to remove a dead body, the city?
Yeah, I thought that there was somebody who like got removed by the city, like somebody. I don't really know how it works, but the way that they show me is like that person was here a while,
Sure.
and then they got picked up and removed.
I mean, even just, we're this close to Skid Row, and I know that happens way more often than it really should.
But then I see
Or
children
that
here
we're
too.
aware of, right?
Then I see like kids here too.
Yeah.
Because it's weird. The building had so many lives, right? So it's like, oh, it's a hospital. Sometimes people had to stay here for something else, like maybe while finding housing, there's people here. Then there's like so many things. Like was there a kitchen here before?
I believe there was
Yeah, because I see somebody cooking.
some kind of community kitchen.
Yeah.
Because, they did a lot of their hosted their kind of community events here. And the basement underneath us where visual communications was like kind of a major event center. Like I said, it was a gym. They had like, half court basketball down there.
I heard that.
Oh, really? You heard that too?
Yeah, I'm just gonna say that Matt and I heard something back there, and both Matt and I turned at the same time. Yeah.
That was a door. I heard the door hardware.
Yeah, you heard that, right? Oh, all right, guys. We're gonna go into the investigation right now.
Bryce, you're gonna be so happy.
So stay tuned for part 2 of our investigation. So real quickly, I went back and listened to the audio, and I time-stamped it and cut it so I could play it back for you, but we actually captured the noise of the door bar kind of jiggling, and here it is.
Community events here, and
So Andy actually goes and investigates what was the cause of that noise at that door. And this was actually a video that I captured after the interview, and here is the audio for it. He returns and tells us that he couldn't find an explanation for it. So here is what he concluded. It was something coming from the front. Andy, what was that?
I don't know. It sounded like the
door, right?
Yeah, it sounded like the crash door hardware, but the wood blocks are in place, so they wouldn't be able to crunch.
That's so weird.
Makes it even weirder.
I think they're ready for us. I think we probably talked about them a lot to the point where they're pretty much here. They've been probably sitting up there in the second level.
It sounded like the crash door hardware, but the wood blocks are in place.
I didn't hear it.
You didn't? I know Matt and I heard it. We looked at each other. Yeah.
Here you've heard so many things. Does it make you less skeptical?
Well, so it was the interaction with Darren that really kind of
Cemented
changed
it.
some things. Well, I mean, because again, I've been collecting all the stories. I don't disbelieve anything, particularly when I see how many are consistent.
Right.
And I have plenty of things that I can easily rationalize.
All right, guys. Well, you're going to have to tune in to part 2 of our investigation. Yes, the second part will be our investigation through the hotspots of the East-West Players Theater in downtown Los Angeles. It's going to be a good one. What did we capture on the Phasma box? What did we feel? What did we see or sense? It's a lot. And trust me, that door was just a warm-up. Also, please let us know if you heard any EVPs during that interview, because we heard a few. We'll be posting them on part 2, but let us know via Gmail. You can email us at hollyweirdparanormal@gmail.com or DM us on our Instagram at hollyweirdparanormal. All right, guys, we have a couple of thank yous that we want to definitely deliver. A huge thank you to Andy and Mark of the East-West Players Theater. Thank you for taking the time out to sit down with us to share this beautiful history of Little Tokyo, the building, and of course, East-West Players. And a huge thank you to Tanya Mercado, our medium. Thank you for taking the time out to do this walkthrough. Guys, go and follow her on Instagram and on TikTok at Ashe Imports, and follow her podcast that she co-hosts with comedian Martin Moreno, Brujo 101. You can find it on Apple Podcasts. I love it. She does a lot of great work with Martin, and they do a lot of wonderful interviews. And of course, another huge thank you to our friend Matt Lytle. Please follow him on his Instagram and TikTok at Matt Lytle. You can also follow his podcast, The Spirit Hunters, that he co-hosts with his friend and paranormal investigator, Chris Califf. All right, guys, you know the drill. If you want to stalk us a little more on social media, you can do that by following us at Hollyweird Paranormal on Instagram, TikTok, and of course, Facebook. You can follow us on Twitter at HWP Podcast. You could drop us a line on our Gmail at hollyweirdparanormal@gmail.com. Send us your ghost stories. We are gearing up for another Listener's Tales episode. We just need more stories. And if you want to be a little extra, you want to donate to the podcast, then please feel free to do so by heading on over to patreon.com/Hollyweird Paranormal. And that is the reason why we were able to go to the East West Players Theater, was because of your donations. Thank you guys for paying for our gas, our coffee. Thank you so much. That's where it goes to. And we definitely want to say thank you to all of our listeners and our supporters. Without you, we wouldn't be here. We honestly wouldn't be doing this podcast. So you guys are amazing, and we adore the hell out of you. But if you want to make a donation of $1 or more per month, or for a couple months, you can do that. You can cancel anytime. Plus, you'll be gifted in coaster stickers, magnets, and keychains. We also have Sabrina, who is our newbie. And don't worry, Sabrina, we'll be sending you your package very soon. We've been delayed with weather, but don't worry, we have you on our mind. Your package is on your way, of course. If you have a little more time, please feel free to drop us a review. Give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts. It really does go a long way, and it helps us indie podcasters out just a tiny bit. And of course, finally, guys, if you are in and around the Los Angeles area between March the 31st through April the 1st, we would love to meet you. We will be heading a panel with our friends Dr. Scott and Dr. Shiloh of LA Not So Confidential podcast for the first annual Parapod Festival. This is going to be an amazing festival. It's going to be held in Santa Clarita at the Hyatt Regency in Valencia, and this is a 2-day event. If you need more information, you can head on over to their Instagram at Parapod Fest, or you can head on over to their website, which is parapodfestival.com. There you can learn more about the workshops, the panels, the speakers, and of course, the TV personalities that will be present. Our friend Patty Negri will definitely be there. Did I mention that stargazing and a ghost hunt at Mentryville, a ghost town, an abandoned ghost town, is included, and it will be led by Ben Hansen. If you don't know who he is, he's been on a bunch of paranormal and UFO shows. He's really, really cool, and I believe he was on the show Fact or Faked, the Paranormal Files. So yeah, that is what's also included. So please head on over to parapodfestival.com to find out more information, and we hope to see you guys there. All right, guys, parting in such sweet sorrow, but my dog is really hungry and she's like bothering me. Like, she's literally pulling on my hoodie right now to feed her. But please stay tuned for part 2 of our investigation, and always remember to take care of yourselves, take care of each other, but most of all, friends, stay Holly weird. Till next time. Bye, guys.